On the Monday morning after a Grand Slam final, a document lands in a small number of inboxes in London. It is not a match report. No rally counts, no winners, no unforced errors, no note about who held serve at 4-all. It is one column of numbers describing how many televisions in the United Kingdom were tuned to BBC One minute by minute across a single Sunday afternoon in July. Nobody in the player's box ever sees it. It shapes more of the next 10 years of the sport than the trophy does. This year, that column peaked at 5.95 million. Last year, same channel, same tournament, same Sunday, it peaked at 8.3 million. The year before, 7.5. 2.35 million people who watched a Wimbledon men's final in 2025 did not watch one in 2026, and the tennis was not the reason. Not a bad final, not a thin fortnight, not a broadcaster quietly losing its audience to the internet. What that number is an invoice. It arrived this month addressed to the entire sport for the absence of one man. And it is bigger than one Sunday, bigger than one final, bigger than one player's wrist. Because this is what the trophy hides. A sport does not sell a champion, it sells a rivalry. The peak measures the rivalry. It has never once measured the trophy. Before we get to New York and to what this same number will look like at the US Open, you need to understand how a peak audience figure is actually built. Almost everyone who shared it this month read it backwards. A peak is not how many people watched, it is the single highest minute of the entire broadcast. 1 minute, usually championship point, sometimes a fifth set at its loudest. The average audience across the whole afternoon is always lower, often by a third or more, and the average is the number that describes the people who are always going to be there. The peak is recruitment. Think about what has to happen for a peak to be large. Somebody who does not follow tennis has to be told by a group chat, by a headline, that something is happening on a channel they already have. They turn it on late, they stay 20 minutes, and they are counted in that one enormous minute and almost none of the others. The peak is the measure of how far a sport reaches past its own supporters. It is the only number in the document that describes growth rather than habit. So what recruits, not quality, this final was by any technical measure superb. Jannik Sinner beat Alexander Zverev 6-7, 7-6, 6-3, 6-4 across 3 hours and 46 minutes to keep the title and take his fifth major. Sinner had removed Novak Djokovic in straight sets in the semi-final 2 days earlier. The champion is the best player alive and looked it. None of that recruits because none of it can be explained to a stranger in one sentence. A rivalry can. A rivalry hands the casual viewer a reason to care about the outcome before they understand the tennis, and that is the entire trick. Sinner walked onto center court having beaten Zverev 9 consecutive times, and Zverev had lost the last 14 sets between them. Their only previous major final had gone the same way. That is not a rivalry. It is a coronation with excellent tennis inside it, and even a first major for Zverev at Roland Garros could not sell it to somebody who does not already care. Here is the part that closes the argument, and it sits in the same document everybody quoted. The women's final was played the same weekend on the same channel in the same country in the same weather. It peaked at 3.92 million. The year before, 4.1 million. The year before that, 4.1 million again. It moved by about 4%. The men's number moved by about 28%. Hold those two side by side because together they eliminate almost every comfortable explanation available. If British audiences were abandoning linear television, the women's final would have fallen too. If tennis were losing the country, it would have fallen too. If it were the weather, the schedule, streaming, or the slow death of terrestrial broadcast, it would have fallen with it. It did not. It barely moved. Whatever took 2.25 million people out of the men's final was specific to the men's final. That is not proof of a cause. It is something almost as useful. It is the elimination of every excuse. Which brings us to the man who was not there and to what he had just done before he vanished. In February, Carlos Alcaraz walked onto Rod Laver Arena and beat Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open final 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5. That win completed the career Grand Slam. He became the youngest man in history to hold all 4 majors and the youngest of the Open era to reach 7, a record that had belonged to Bjorn Borg at 23. He had 2 of everything, 2 at Roland Garros, 2 at Wimbledon, 2 at the US Open, and now Melbourne. He has not played a competitive match since April. It happened in the first round in Barcelona against Otto Virtanen. He described it himself the next day. As you all saw yesterday during the match, after a return shot, I felt something give in my wrist, and the discomfort kept getting worse throughout the match. Then on what the scans found, it is a slightly more serious injury than we all expected, and the line that has aged into the whole story. As I have said before, I have to listen to my body, to what is best for me, and avoid it affecting me in the future. Madrid went, Rome and Roland Garros went together, announced 10 days after the injury in Barcelona. Wimbledon went, the Canadian Open went. He has slid from #1 to #3 in the world, the last drop without playing a match, and he is defending 3,000 ranking points across Cincinnati and the US Open, which is the kind of arithmetic that turns an injury into a collapse. And the line that should end any argument about whether this matters came from the only person in the sport with no reason to say it. Sinner, holding the trophy he had just defended, was asked about the state of the sport. We hope that Carlos is coming back as well because tennis needs him. The reigning champion on the Sunday of his own coronation told a room full of reporters that the game requires the man who was not in the building. He was generous about the man who was there. Big respect to Sasha because he's doing something amazing. Both things are true at once, and that is precisely the problem. The tennis was excellent. The audience still left. So New York. Alcaraz is on the entry list as defending champion. Cincinnati from the 13th of August is the intended comeback, and his team is reported to be weighing a smaller event instead if the wrist is not ready in time, which tells you how they are thinking. If he does not play, the same hole opens on a larger stage, in the market that pays the most for it, and the conversation shifts from his wrist to the tour's business model inside a day. If he plays and loses in the second round, that is arguably worse. A schedule gets built around him, a fortnight of promotion gets spent on him, and he is gone by the first Thursday. There is exactly one outcome that repairs the number, and everyone in the sport knows what it is. Alcaraz on the second Sunday on the other side of the net from Sinner. Tennis has its champion. It has him early. It has him for a decade. What it lost in April was not a champion. The trophy has an owner. The audience was never watching the trophy.